Speaking of learning, a new study by today's homeowners reveal a widening gap in home ownership between Black and white Americans.
You don't say. Don't you always say water is wet?
Water's wet.
Nearly 75% of white Americans own their homes, while less than half of Black Americans can't say the same. The gap has worsened by over 2 percentage points since 1994, with most of the increase happening since 2010. The South had some of the narrowest gaps, while Midwestern states had the biggest gaps in 2021.
That's right. Only 15 states narrowed their gap from 2010 to 2021, with the Rocky Mountain state of Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming leading the way. In recognition of Black History Month, today's homeowners with Danny Lipford has released a new data study that sheds light on the persistent and growing gap in home ownership rates between Black and white Americans.
Yeah, the study asks the pressing question of whether Black Americans are being locked out of the American dream of home ownership. To discuss these findings, we have invited realtor and financial expert Annalisa Carter to join us. Welcome to FOXSOUL's Black Report, Annalisa.
Thank you so much for having me.
Indeed. Thanks for being here.
And so, Annalisa, can you tell us, in your opinion, what are some of the key reasons for the persistent gap in home ownership rates between Black and white Americans? We've seen so much of this in the headlines recently. Yeah. So tell us, what's driving this?
So just to look at the statistics, about 74% of white homeowners versus 44% of Black households are homeowners. So that's a 30% gap. And what's actually been driving this is historically we've seen redlining through discriminatory services, but now more recently we're seeing investments. People are coming in and large financial institutions are coming in and purchasing properties in our community. Gentrification was another thing that caused that as well. So for example, JP Morgan committed to $1 billion in purchasing homes across the country. And so they're becoming mega landlords and pushing a campaign for renters. So that's a big contributing factor.
Yeah, based on the research that we have here, your research, research that everybody's been tapping into. In your opinion, what steps do you believe can be taken to close that Black-white home ownership gap, and then, make home ownership accessible to more Black Americans? That seems to be the two areas that are being challenged as of late.
Right. So the first thing we need to do is become educated and bring awareness to our community about the importance of home ownership. The first thing, as I tell my clients all the time, is to understand your financial benefits of home ownership and look at your credit profile. We need to take stock into ownership and buy back the block. That means reinvest in our own communities.
And just to follow up on that, so how do we reinvest in our own communities when right now, for example, we see interest rates keep ticking up? And so, there are a lot of people that, are sort of anticipating a recession, although we've heard from the president and others that there is no recession looming in the immediate term. And so talk to us a little bit about some of the consumer behavior that we should have versus the consumer behavior that we actually have that may be preventing us from doing exactly that, buying back the block.
Sure, that's a great point. Well, we've seen since November, the interest rates have been steadily decreasing. And so that's a clear indication that it's still a good time for our community to buy back the block, essentially. And so it's a great opportunity as the recession is looming. We can't really look into a lot of the headlines. We really have to focus in on our local market. And I will say the panic has started to subside and consumers are definitely starting to come back, especially as the spring market is starting to come about.
Yeah.
So they're really feeling that and being encouraged. And so we have to definitely, again, for me, is just educating them on the importance of it and bringing awareness that they can actually do that.
Yeah. So, you've given us some steps on how we can take responsibility for positioning ourselves in regards to home ownership. How do we hold these institutions, these financial institutions responsible, when you talk about the full gamut of the process to own a home, when you've got appraisals coming back and black folks are being shortchanged? In that case, who do we need to stay on? Twitter fingers, letters, campaigns? Who do you think we need to target in those cases?
We need to target everyone. We need to bring awareness, whether you're on social media, talking to your local lawmakers. It starts within your community. And again, just bringing that awareness. And again, talking to people who are in the industry, realtors, because we see trends within our community. So it's not like a national headline. We really get hyper-focused and hyper-local and look at hyper-local markets.
And if there was just one thing that you can leave our soulmates with, one thing that we can do to prepare ourselves for home ownership, and for those folks that may own their own home, may own property, what's that one thing we can do to sort of head up to the next level of home ownership and really take advantage of so many different new and interesting opportunities in the marketplace?
Understand that you can't be fearful or do it scared. You just have to start somewhere. My biggest thing is to talk to people about group economics and really telling them to tap into the different resources that they have. So look at different programs, especially for first-time home buyers. Tapping into the first-time home buyer programs within your community. Definitely taking advantage of those resources is the number one step. And understanding your credit profile as well and your affordability. I would say, I know you asked for one, but looking at those three things to definitely have our community definitely buy into taking stock in ownership.
Yeah, we definitely want to give our soulmates as much information as possible. Annalisa Carter, expert realtor, thank you so much for the information today. You're now officially a soulmate, and we're a little nosy. That house is cute, girl. Thank you so much for thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you.
All right, take care. It's a pleasure.
Still ahead, serving up soul with a side of unity this Black History Month.
We'll introduce you to the Black-owned restaurant that's cooking up Black excellence when we return. You're watching FOXSOUL's Black Report, your President's Day special edition.
That's right, that's right, that's right.